We're continuing with Wherever You Go in this year 2022 with encouraging words. And today's Devo is called Back with Your Exes. So we're about to move to the New Testament for encouragement, but first I'm going to pause and insert something here that we talked about at our house the other night. I'll begin by saying that we often are discouraged because things are out of order or missing. So let's have a practical application here for a second. Think about having a meal without preparation. The whole house would be out of sync and distressed if there wasn't somebody that prepared and bought the food, somebody that actually made the meal, and then we can sit down and enjoy it. Without those steps and those preps beforehand, it's impossible to have a meal. And yet, we often try to be encouraged when we're discouraged, or like we try to show up for dinner, so to speak, without any of the prep involved in making that encouragement happen. So recently we read a verse that said, I will exalt the Lord, and then I will exalt him, and then in a few chapters later it said, I will extol him. So my husband and I started talking about those Exes and what they meant and what the difference was in those words, or was there any difference? So the prefix X means up or out, in the case of exercising the privilege and honor of praising God. To exalt means to view him as high or superior, and it comes from the Latin word meaning high. And let's say that's like step one, getting a recipe for a meal. This is placing God in our minds and in our hearts where he belongs, above all circumstances, above every other name, and above our understanding. So without that placement, there's no meal of encouragement that's going to take place. To exult with a U is to jump for joy or to rejoice, and it comes from the Latin word jump. It's a response to the view and the placement that we've given God, and it's actually like preparing the meal, laying out the ingredients, getting the pans necessary, the fire under the food to make the aromas begin. So how we respond to the knowledge of where we've placed him sets us up for either encouragement or discouragement. The meal of encouragement is what we're going after. Without exalting and exalting God, there's no third step of extolling him. To extol means to actually raise and elevate, and it comes from the Latin word raise. This is different from exalting because it's no longer just a placement in our minds or even a reaction in our hearts, but it's now an action of lifting him up high. We know where he belongs, and we're actually raising his name through praise and adoration. So all three of these words, exalt, exalt, and extol, have a little bit of different meanings, and we'll again talk about finding a recipe, making the food, and preparing the meal, and then we're satisfied. So here's what I realized. I've known others, and even myself sometimes, when I can't really get into worship, I can't feel anything, I can't relate to those around me who are singing and surrendering in joy. And some of these people can't wait till worship time is over. And this is why there's been no exalting of God and no exalting of him, and it makes sense that extolling cannot happen. And Psalm 147 is this entire meal prep analogy from start to finish. The first 6 verses include the recipe for encouragement. It tells of how good God is, acknowledging his character. In verses 1 and 7, we're told to sing and make music. That's the reaction, the exalting. It's the catalyst for the meal itself of being encouraged. Then more placement and recalling of the character of God, and in verse 12 we're told to extol him. And you can read about the exalting and the exalting a few chapters before. Extolling him is the meat, the meal, the worship, the encouragement that sustains us and causes us to combine all the elements of encouragement into a satisfying meal of praising him. Exalting him and placing him where he belongs, reacting to that placement by singing and rejoicing, and then actually lifting up his name through worship is the complete dinner experience with candles, romance, satiation, and more. It all makes sense to me now. I've often tried to go straight to deep worship with him to make myself feel better and given up in desperation. But I've missed that placement and that reaction and then the worship all in right order. I can't sit at a table and eat unless everything's been prepared and gathered, and that someone is me. Once I establish that God belongs on top, front and center, I've reacted to that with joy and pleasure, then I can extol and lift up high the name of my God and enter into sweet fellowship that encourages me and satisfies more than a box of chocolates. Do your own studies of exalt, exalt, and extol, and get back with your exes. Read Psalm 147, write out your recipe, gather your pans and your ingredients, and pull up a chair next to him, or kneel at his feet, or lay your head in his lap, all of which you will be able to do because you got back with your ex.